Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and Archaven Comics. So, as you're probably aware, as you may have noticed, NPR combined with Rolling Stone did a little hit piece. It was focused on me. It was focused on Archaven, and it was focused on the legend Chuck Dixon. In fact, I forgot to pop the cover up. There we go. And so this is the NPR hit piece on Vox Day and the legend Chuck Dixon. Like I promised the other day, I am going to go through the article and make the various corrections that are required. But before I do that, I need to thank everybody who was backing Alt Hero Q, and we're very appreciative for all the support. 1,436 backers, and we raised 102,000 versus our goal of 50,000. And the whole team is appreciative. The whole team is hitting the ground running. Chuck is already working on the script. Helix Hayes is already, I think he's up to page 9 right now, 8 or 9. And so, we are going to get this done in due time. We expect the first issue to be out before the end of the year. We're going to ship the t-shirts immediately. So this is not going to be a situation where people are wondering what happened and why we haven't delivered. Also, Alt Hero number 5 and number 6 are in process, and as soon as they're done and out, then we can put together the first Alt Hero paperbacks and hardcovers. So there's a question, why is Ethan trying to draw Chuck away from Archaven? Because he's just a nasty little guy. He's butthurt over the fact that he got called out as a liar by me, which I did because he is. He's actually one of the most dishonest people I've had the misfortune to have to deal with in the past few years. It's kind of interesting because I did an interview with Bleeding Cool, and they don't like me. They don't like the fact that I am actively opposed to SJWs. But the interesting thing is that the fact that I see through Ethan Van Sciver is clearly something that is a point in my favor. And the thing is that there's no need to go to war over this stuff. He's just being a pain in the ass. He's trying to be a pain in the ass. He's never going to be able to draw Chuck Dixon away from Archaven for the very simple reason that Chuck is, I would say, somewhere between 8 and 10 times faster than Ethan Van Sciver. So I have no idea what Ethan is going to do next. I was shocked when he denied knowing about the whole Comicsgate comics imprint. That astonished me. And then I was surprised that he kept, selling that lie to his backers and followers. If someone's going to do that, what can you do? I don't even know if he's legitimately of the political right at all. How can we believe anything that he said? For all we know, he actually loves the new Star Wars. Once you see somebody telling that many lies, You can't trust him. But anyhow, enough about Two-Face. Let's go on to talk about this reveal hit piece. Now, it was interesting. I have to give them some credit. Al Letson is the guy behind Reveal. It's a corporate propped up Center for Investigative Reporting. It's a total left-wing vehicle. It goes around and attacks people and so forth. I have to say the guy has an excellent radio voice. I mean, really top notch. I'm listening to him tell all this nonsense about comics and me and Chuck Dixon, and what cracked me up was that all I was thinking is, man, this guy should be doing audiobooks. Anyhow, he starts out, and his whole narrative is that he's a massive comics fan. He fell in love with comic books, and he doesn't think he'd be talking to you today if he didn't have those comic books. Whatever. I mean, possibly it's true. He says, I am and always will be a comics book nerd, which is why my spidey sense started tingling when I heard about a new independent comic book titled Alt Hero. Okay. Color me dubious, but maybe that's true. The alt in Alt Hero, of course, is a reference to the alt-right, the white nationalist movement. Okay, right there we have our first lies. The alt in Alt Hero does not refer to the alt-right. The alt in Alt Hero refers to alternative hero. We are the alternative to Marvel and to DC. We are the alternative to the SJW-dominated comics industry. Now, in the same way, the alt-right is an alternative to the conservatives. The alt-right is an alternative to the neocons. But they both mean alternative. They are alternatives to different things. Now, I understand that there can be some confusion. I understand that because I am alt-right, the fact that I created Alt Hero, people might assume, well, that's why. But it's not why. I'm the one who created it. I know what I was thinking. I know what I meant. They don't. Furthermore, the alt-right is not a white nationalist movement. The alt-right supports nationalisms. I don't really even believe that white nationalism exists. I don't even believe that it's possible. So if I am, like they say, a thought leader in the alt-right, and I don't believe that white nationalism exists or is viable for the same reason that pan-Arab nationalism was not viable, for the same reason that EU pan-European nationalism is not possible, then how can the alt-right be summed up as a white nationalist movement? Doesn't make sense. Can't. Anyhow, so then he complains about the original campaign video for Alt Hero. Fair enough. And he says, the so-called alt-right is moving into comics. On today's show, we're going to look at that movement and how comic books, toxic fans, and social media have become part of the culture war. And one of the soldiers in that war, and then it quotes me, saying it's a big step in the culture wars because it's the first time that the right is actually taking back ground that the left had previously claimed. That's absolutely true. The significance of what we are doing is that, unlike Gamergate, which was defensive, what we're doing is taking the offense. We are claiming cultural ground that belongs to the left. That's one reason why they're upset about it. This is a good line. One of the soldiers in that war is a man with a name like a supervillain, Vox Day. And then, let's see here. Vox Day is the creator of Alt Hero. Okay, that's true. That's fine. I say, then he quotes me as saying, anything the left tells us is off limits. We're going to be going for that, and we're going to go for it hard. True. The characters in his comics have secret identities. So does he, sort of. His name is, and then Amanda chimes in, Theodore Beale, and he's from Minnesota. It's not a frickin' secret identity. I even told Amanda what it means. Okay? Since we're dealing with people who are clearly not very bright, I will explain it. My birth name, my real name, is Theodore Beale. Okay? My dad was involved in politics at the time that I was involved in a techno band signed to Wax Trax Records. Wax Trax Records was a gay record label, and a lot of our songs dealt with the enthusiastic endorsement of drugs. I did not wish to be used as a weapon against my father, so I chose a stage name. It was Vox Day. We started using it. I got called that all the time by the other guys in the band and so forth. Although actually on the album we chose a different stage name because Paul was concerned that by using the name Vox, people would think that I was the lead singer. These are the kind of stupid things you worry about when you're in a band and you're 22 years old. Anyhow, everybody seems to be able to follow the English into Latin. Vox Dei. There's that famous phrase, the voice of the people is the voice of the God, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. Well, if you then follow it into Greek, Vox Dei becomes Vox Theos. Theos means God. So now you go back to English, voice Theos. All Vox Dei means, all Vox Dei ever meant is Theo's voice. The voice of Theo. It's my pen name. That's it. It's not a secret identity. It's on frickin' Wikipedia. If you go to Google and you just type in Vox Dei, it will actually tell you exactly how old I am, my birthday, my parents' names. If it's a secret identity, it is the worst secret identity in the history of secret identities. Anyhow, now there's a slight exaggeration here. He talks about Amanda Robb. She interviewed Vox Dei for this story. No, she did not. Amanda interviewed me for a story about Castalia House. That's why there's virtually nothing of the 3-hour interview that she did with me in here. My suspicion is that she tried to sell the story about Castalia House. They're like, this isn't that interesting. I told her about her comics. She connected it to the whole alt-right thing and managed to get NPR interested. So now there's like this NPR thing. There's going to be a little video documentary that they wanted me to reappear on. Now, I stopped talking to her at that point because I realized that what had been an open and honest, based on the interview, straightforward interview about Castalia House, what we were doing, why it was successful, and so forth, suddenly had been turned into a hit piece. So I stopped talking to her at that point. And, but the point is, she did not interview me for this story. She interviewed me for a different story that was not supposed to be on the radio. And it was for a story about Castalia House, not about the alt-right, not about comics. When she interviewed me, we hadn't even begun doing the comic stuff. Then she says, even though he's an American white nationalist, that's not true. I am not a white nationalist. He lives in Europe, and he is what you would call an influencer or even a thought leader of the alt-right. Okay, fine. Then she says, he runs an independent publishing house that puts out books by other extreme conservatives, like Martin Van Creveld. Martin Van Creveld is an Israeli leftist. It's ridiculous. We publish, yes, myself, We publish Mike Cernovich. We publish Jack Posobiec. Those are all people that they might try to call extreme conservatives. I'm not even a conservative, for crying out loud. I've never called myself a conservative. I've written a book about how conservatives betrayed America. So how am I an extreme conservative? Anyhow, let's see. He's a prolific blogger. He wrote an influential manifesto on the alt-right. By his early 30s, he was calling himself Vox Dei. That's technically true. I was actually doing it when I was 22, which means the voice of God, roughly. See, she knows the truth, but she doesn't want to say it. Why doesn't she want to say it? Well, because if I am making triple entendres involving Latin and Greek, then suddenly I look intelligent. That's contra the narrative. Can't have that. Hansville says, why did you even talk to them? I didn't talk to Al. I never talked to Al. I talked to Amanda a while, like over a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. And she had approached me about a story about Castalia House. And she didn't ask any harmful questions. She didn't ask any serious leading questions or anything like that. She actually asked reasonable questions about Castalia House. It wasn't even about me, which is why almost all of the recordings of me here are taken from my appearance on InfoWars, from these Darkstreams, and they didn't have any negative material. I did not do this interview. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Then she says, but sometimes he also calls himself the Supreme Dark Lord. I don't call myself the Supreme Dark Lord, at least not very often. It's a nickname that was given to me by other people. Okay? They also call me SDL. About the only time that I call myself Supreme Dark Lord is when I'm in some sort of situation that seems to call for it. But it's not like I run around introducing myself to people that way. Anyhow, and Al says, so he calls himself the Supreme Dark Lord, and then he wonders why people make him out to be evil. I don't wonder why people make me out to be evil. I know why they do. Because I violate their narrative and I threaten their narrative. So they only have two weapons. They call people evil and they call people stupid. They can't successfully call me stupid, so they call me evil. This is not rocket science. And then she says, yeah, it's hard to understand. I mean, they feign ignorance in order to try to support this narrative. So then they talk about alt hero. Okay, now this is just ridiculous. Okay, so when did the alt hero comic book get started? Well, Vox launched a crowdfunding campaign after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Okay, that's true. And it has nothing to do with it. I also launched a crowdfunding campaign after the NFL 2016 season. What they're trying to do is they're trying to draw a connection between the Unite the Right rally and our crowdfunding. And also, I'm not even sure, let me check here. I'm not even sure that that's correct. When did the alt hero fundraising actually take place? I thought it was more in October. Let's see here. I'm going to look this up. Okay. There we are. There we are. See if they have a date on this. I don't actually see a date on it. Let me try something else here. Okay. So I'm going to look for the date that we started the Free Starter campaign. I was still on Periscope. Okay. Let's see. It was met. Dun, 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 dun. It looks like we started it at the end of September. So is that what they said? Okay, yeah. She says he started crowdfunding in September. Okay, apparently they were correct about that. Technically, it started on September 28th, so almost a year ago. If you remember, the Unite the Right rally was when neo-Nazis and the KKK and other groups took to the streets in Charlottesville, and they were shouting things like "Jews will not replace us" and waving around Confederate flags. What does that have to do with Alt Hero? What does that have to do with me? Nothing. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved. It had nothing to do with our crowdfunding campaign. So then he says, Confederate flags seem to be a thing for Vox Day. I'm on his crowdfunding page and there's a superhero named Rebel. She's a curvy redhead squeezed into a skimpy costume that's got the design of a Confederate flag. She also waves one around. And then they quote me saying, as you can see, we're not afraid to fly the Confederate flag despite the fact that the left has come out so hard against it. Now, I'd already said that we are doing things specifically to offend the left. And then the left has come out very hard against that. So of course we did. I mean, we have more characters that involve the European Union flag than the Confederate flag. Do they conclude that I am a EU supporter? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyhow, he says, this is from a May 2018 interview with Vox Day on InfoWars. That's the far-right website and radio show that's so extreme. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube banned it. See how they pile on. Everything they do, everything that one aspect of the left does, the other one supports it. They're just constantly trying to build this false narrative. They're piling lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. That's how they create their narrative. Their whole narrative is false. Anyhow, it's all quoting me and Alex Jones talking. So then it says, when Vox Day says SJW, that's short for Social Justice Warriors, which sounds good, right? Because fighting for justice is a good thing. But apparently it's not. It's a diss that's become a buzzword for the alt-right. It's not true. You know, it's become a buzzword for everyone. Even people who are of the left, like Jordan Peterson, use the term SJW and oppose SJWs because SJWs are not fighting for justice. SJWs are fighting for the convergence of all individuals and all organizations towards what they believe to be their ideals of the moment. So then Al says, Vox Day is trying to make the argument that social justice warriors are on a mission to ruin comics with a leftist, feminist, diversity agenda. Yes, that's true. The marketing of Alt Hero is all about stoking those fears. I think that's reasonably true. Remember, this is the first comic Vox Day has ever written. That's right. Guess what else? #1 Amazon bestseller. You know, it's kind of funny because they never seem to talk about that. They don't like to talk about that. The first comic that I ever wrote has been very successful. They point out that, gee, maybe he's pretty good at this. Of course not. So then he says, so you actually met with Vox Day and interviewed him. What was it like? Okay. So I got in touch with him, and at first he said no, he doesn't talk to the mainstream media because we're all fake news and we lie. Exactly. But then he rethought. He finally agreed to meet me, so I said, great, where are you? He was like, I'm not telling you. Right, do you think I'm stupid? I'm like, all right, well, I'll come to your office in Finland. He's like, no, you can't come there. So I'm like, what is she, 12? Okay, so where can we meet? He picked the Geneva airport. Geneva, Switzerland? Yeah, I was in Europe for a different story, so I went to meet him. Notice how this is all like trying to... I actually asked Amanda during this interview, I actually asked her why they always make a point of saying, you know, Vox Day, real name, Theodore Real. You never see them saying Bono, real name, whatever his name is. Paul Newman or whatever it is. Why do you never see them pointing out, Madonna's real name, or anyone else's real name? And she said, well, the reason is because it makes you look, when we do that, it makes you look shady and shifty. So what she's trying to do here is she's trying to do the same thing. She's trying to make me look shady and shifty. Never mind. I'm not going to tell you this information because I know you're going to try to use it against me somehow. And the thing is, my wife told me that I shouldn't do this. She said, just don't talk to them. It's going to, it's going to turn out wrong. It's going to turn out bad. She's going to try to use it against you. And I said at the time, I don't see how. I mean, if she tries to talk to me about me or my beliefs, I'm just not going to answer. I'm there to talk about Castalia House. That's what we'll talk about. And I actually did do a pretty good job of that. The problem is that she managed to transmogrify what was the interview about Castalia House into this. So anyhow, she says, I went to a restaurant in the airport and I look around and there's a white guy in a gray t-shirt. Okay, that's all wrong. She was in the restaurant. She was sitting down and I walked in. Notice how she's stressing the white because she knows that I'm an Indian. Sure, I look white. I look Anglo-Irish. That's true. Doesn't change the fact. Also, I wasn't wearing a gray t-shirt. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I was actually wearing a black t-shirt, like one of those long sleeve ones. And he has thinning hair. That's actually a little bit optimistic. I'm surprised she didn't say that I was a skinhead. Just a regular looking white guy like I went to high school with. Then we ordered the world's most expensive hamburgers, and I want to say we talked for 3 hours, but really I listened to him for 3 hours. That's not true. She was asking questions, she was talking, but the main thing is, it's an interview. She asked questions, I answered. But again, what she's trying to do, she's trying to poison the well. She is trying to make me look bad. The problem is, they're not that smart. So she quotes me saying, Vox's first law, any sufficiently advanced intelligence is indistinguishable from insanity. Amanda Robb, what's that a play on? Arthur C. Clarke's first law of science and magic, which is, any sufficiently advanced in technology is indistinguishable from magic. Okay, what does it mean? So, I don't think she realizes how stupid it makes her look, or how intelligent it makes me look if I'm able to produce the answers to her questions off the top of my head and correctly cite these things. Again, these people, not exactly the smartest people in the industry. Then she says, he was the hardest interview I've ever done and the worst interview I've ever done. It was Austrian philosophers and war theory and genetic information. It was all tangled and knotted. In other words, I didn't give her what she wanted. We talked all this time, and the only thing that she got in the whole interview was this little clip. Do you not think women should vote? I think it depends. In a representative democracy, no. Me? But I'm so smart. I've lived for years in a place where I couldn't vote, so I just don't quite understand what the... But not because of your gender, because you're not a citizen. Yeah, but I mean, the main problem, that was it. That was the entire clip that she got from a 3-hour interview. This is why you don't talk to the mainstream media. All she wanted in that 3-hour interview, the whole reason that she considered to be such a hard interview and the worst interview she's ever done, is because I didn't give her what she wanted. She wanted me to say stuff that she could use to discredit me and to make me look bad. I didn't give her much. Yes, she got me saying that about women's suffrage, but so what? I've written dozens of blog posts about it. My position is not a mystery. My position is very clear. And all she got was me describing a mild version of my position and her going, but I'm so smart. No, Amanda, you're not. So anyhow, Al says, so after you met him that one time and had expensive hamburgers, did you talk to him again? Yeah, we've talked on the phone. We've talked by Skype. He was actually very nice to me and forthcoming in his own very intellectual, convoluted way until he got mad at me. Why did he get mad at you? Because you wanted to vote? Or, oh, very clever. That's it. She doesn't even answer it. All of that was just a little dig. She couldn't answer why I got mad at her. I got mad at her because it became clear that she was now working on a hit piece. And I wasn't really mad at her per se. I just refused to talk to her. I refused to talk to her. Everybody refused to talk to her. The last person that she talked to was Chuck Dixon, because we saw, that's when we realized it was a hit piece, after Al and Amanda showed up and talked to her. So anyhow, now this is funny. So Vox Day claims to have gotten money to produce these comics books through a crowdfunding website. I'm on that site, and it says he started off trying to raise $25,000, but he raised close to $236,000. That just amazes me. It's actually pretty unbelievable. Where's that money coming from? Well, that's the $236,000 question. It's very hard to tell. Most of it's from anonymous donors, and a lot of it comes in very large increments. Some up to $5,000 each, which is weird because the average donation to a crowdfunding project is about $66. You know what they leave out? They leave out the fact that there are 2,100 donors to it. The average donation to Alt Hero was $106. Yes, that's higher than the average. It's not exactly high enough to be suspicious. Then Hal says, but we don't know if he actually raised that money. It looks like it, but we don't know it for a fact. We've published 20 comics since then. Do they think that we're just getting all these people to draw for free? I mean, the thing that's crazy about it is that we are so efficient. We are so effective that people who work in the industry, that lunatic Jason Youngblood calls himself Death Ray, he thought that it would be impossible for us to produce comics with that amount of money. He thought that there was no way we could do it, and predicted that we would never release a single comic. We have produced over 24 already. So anyhow, then she says, I think that's a really good point, because Alt Hero was raising money on a crowdfunding site called Freestarter, and apparently Vox Day helped create it. No, I didn't. I didn't have anything to do with it. It's a private site. It's totally black box. There's no way to find out who made most of the donations, where the money came from, when it went, if it actually existed. She goes on, blah, 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 blah. So who's distributing Alt Hero? Amazon. Why is Amazon distributing this book? Because Amazon sells pretty much everything that they, that people want to sell through it. In fact, Amazon really risks violating antitrust stuff if they start rejecting people. To the extent that they've been doing it, they've endangered themselves, and that's why they're trying to be careful now. Amanda says, well, I asked Amazon, and someone from their PR department got back to me. He said it falls within their guidelines. It does. Nothing that we do is objectionable. They sell a lot of stuff that is way more objectionable than anything that we produce. He helpfully sent me a link to their guidelines, so I click on them, and it says their definition of offensive material is, and I'm quoting, what we deem offensive is probably about what you would expect. Al says, that doesn't make sense because I find this offensive, and they don't find it offensive. How does he know? He's never read it. Well, it's a very movable goalpost, it turns out. Amazon changes what it thinks is offensive all the time. Yeah, mostly under pressure from SJWs. I don't know. That rule seems pretty flimsy. Well, that's the idea. They can do whatever they want. Not only is Amazon distributing the digital version, it's #1 in its category on Amazon. So how does this book become a bestseller? This is where it starts. I mean, they're piling conspiracy theory on top of conspiracy theory. Okay? It's the first comic I've ever written. They don't know that the money used to create it ever actually existed. And now it's an Amazon bestseller, but maybe no one's reading it. Well, it's possible that a lot of people are really reading it, and it's possible that Vox is taking advantage of something Amazon does, which is called micro-categorizing. So right now, one of the issues of Alt Hero is the #1 new release in superhero graphic novels. That's a pretty small category, but it is #1 in that category. Superhero graphic novels is not a small category. It's not the biggest category in Amazon, but it is not a micro category. It is a very significant category. It is very hard to get the top spot in there, either as a bestseller or as a new release. Is there a way to game the system? Sure, there's a way to game the system. You have your fans and followers click on the book. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. That's not gaming the system. That is the system. All the most successful authors on Amazon make most of their money on Kindle Unlimited now. Kindle Unlimited has a monthly budget of $22 million. That is not gaming the system. That is the system. And it's true. No, someone says, Horatio says, I think we underestimate the intelligence of our enemy. This propaganda piece is designed to have Amazon take Alt Hero and Vox off their website. The piece is not designed to do that. This little section is a signal that that's something that they would like to do. That's something that they would, wish for. But they've got nothing. I mean, see, the thing is, they don't even understand what Amazon doesn't allow. What they should have done is they should have, if they wanted to get us kicked off of Amazon, then they need to change the narrative to us doing things that Amazon does not approve of. Amazon has been kicking a lot of authors off. All right? Because they do things that violate the rules. They stuff their books with unrelated material. They have it set up so that the table of contents is at the back, so that if you tap something, it goes to the back and it records the whole book as being read when it hasn't been. Those are the kind of things that Amazon bans, right? We don't do any of that stuff. We've never done any of that stuff. And on the occasions when when an SJW in Amazon has maliciously unpublished or otherwise interfered with one of our books, Amazon has apologized to us and has fixed the situation promptly. And so, anyhow, it's total nonsense. So, Well, why would he do this? Well, it's called astroturfing, and what that means is to make something that's a fake grassroots campaign. What it does is make somebody seem more popular, more powerful, more successful than they are, and sometimes fake success can lead to real success. Or maybe it's real. Maybe we're just successful. See, but that violates their narrative. Their whole narrative is that we can't be successful, so if it looks like we're successful, and it does look like we're successful, then we must be lying about the Kickstarter, gaming Amazon. The funny thing is, most of our comics are not even sold through Amazon. You know, if we actually sold all our comics through Amazon, if we didn't sell most of our comics through Archaven Direct and through InfoWars and other places, then you know, our rankings would be much higher. So, so what is real success? The ideas being fought over in the streets of Charlottesville are now being fought in the pages of comic books, because what better way to normalize their ideas than something as innocent as a comic book? Comic books are not innocent. You know, read Sandman. And then there's another quote from a Skype call between us. Keep in mind, where's the interview? I explained, well, a lot of people came up and been telling me they wanted me to get into comics. Let's see. It's more because of what was happening with Marvel. They were starting to introduce these heavily SJW characters, their female Thor, their fat Samoan G.I. Joe soldier, all these ridiculous characters that nobody liked. But he thought, okay, I'll give it a whirl and see if there's an audience up for that. And they did a fundraising campaign, crowdfunding. Then what happened was a guy named Chuck Dixon backed the project. So now what they're trying to do is they're trying to say that the reason that we got, see, this is the segue. They're trying to imply that our success and our credibility comes from Chuck Dixon. Now, I've learned a lot from working with Chuck Dixon. Chuck Dixon definitely helped people take us seriously initially. But, you know, what I would point out is, take a look at the sales. What sells better? Alt Hero or Chuck Dixon's Avalon? Alt Hero or some of the other stuff that Chuck's been working on? Chuck is great. You know, I hope Chuck works with us, you know, for years. But to say that he is, you know, giving us all of our credibility, or that we are somehow dependent on him, is simply false. And that's all I'm going to go into. I'm not going to go into what they did to him, but what they did to him, to the legend Chuck Dixon, was actually much worse than what they did to me, because they actually sat down with him and did an interview with him and ambushed him. And so, you know, this is yet another reason why you don't talk to the mainstream media. It was a mistake for me to talk to Amanda Robb, even though it was supposed to be a interview about my company. You know, I was thinking, okay, it's fine. I'm not doing interviews about me. I'm not doing interviews about my beliefs. But you know, I'm doing this new venture. The media, you know, we need to be able to talk to the media about this new venture so people find out about it and so forth. But the fact is, we can't do that now. You know, there are some outlets that we can talk to. We can talk to Bounding into Comics. Maybe we'll be able to talk to Bleeding Cool. We'll see how the interview that I did with him runs. But it's you know, it's just not worth it. And so you know, keep that in mind, and just don't do it. You know, it's tempting. They're very good at telling you that they're going to tell your side of the story. They just want to give you your chance to tell your side and stuff. But you can see that they boil down a 3-hour interview to 6 lines of dialogue that are not even related to the subject that the interview is about. So don't talk to them. Since there's a lot more people here now, let me repeat. Thank you so much for the support that you showed for Alt Hero Q. We're delighted, we're appreciative, we're grateful, and we are going to use the resources wisely that that you've given us. Tiger says, you cannot talk to Bleeding Cool, they're going to screw you. No, I know they're not, because I only do things in writing. I already got the questions. I have to say, and I don't say this very often about SJWs, the questions that I got from Rich Johnston are some of the best interview questions I've ever received. And I've been interviewed by everybody from Wired to the New York Times. I don't agree, obviously, with a lot of Rich's positions, but the guy is pretty smart. And it was a very I don't know how much of the interview is going to run. I'm pretty sure, to be honest, that he primarily sees me as a useful stick with which to hit Ethan Van Sciver. But the interview was really good and very wide-ranging, and some of the questions were excellent. And so we'll see what he runs of it. I'm not going to do anything until he runs the interview, but I will post the entire interview on my blog later. So you'll all be able to read it. You'll all be able to see it. And I'm not doing that. I won't be doing that to expose the guy in any way. I'll be doing that because you are going to be interested in both the questions and the answers. He had some really interesting questions. I actually had to think about some of the things. Yes, there was obviously some of the, the kind of pointless questions about, what's the difference between white supremacy and white nationalism and all that kind of thing. But that wasn't the focus. Now, again, it's possible, on the one hand, it's possible that he would boil the whole thing down to that, like Amanda Robb did. But I don't think so, because frankly, I strongly suspect that he has a bigger game in mind, and I think that he was very interested in why I changed my opinion so quickly and so publicly on Ethan Van Sciver. So, I'm not saying the guy's honest. I don't know very much about him. My entire contact with him prior to this was I sent out a press release about Alt Hero when we first created it, and he basically mocked it on Twitter, just saying why the hell would I ever want to read this? Okay, fair enough. If you don't, you don't. But what happened was he put something up on Bleeding Cool and referred to me as a number of things, all of which were accurate. And he also mentioned white supremacist, which is not accurate. I emailed him. I told him that's totally false. Please retract it, which he immediately did. And then he said, would you be willing to answer some questions? And I said, sure. Send me the questions in writing. I'll answer them. We've done that now. I don't know when he's going to run the piece. I would imagine pretty soon. But, we'll see how it goes. But regardless, we have the whole thing. I'll put the whole thing out there. Yes, he would have read my responses now. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that regardless of what he thinks, he is in the business of covering the comics industry. He ignored us previously because it was reasonable to do so. We were a brand new startup. We could have easily been just another fly-by-night that never managed to publish anything. We've now published 25 comics. A number of them have been doing very well. we are becoming a legitimate force to be reckoned with in the comics industry, and there's every indication that that's only going to increase over time. So, so we'll see how it goes. And again, when I say don't talk to the media, that's a heuristic. You have to know when to apply it. I needed to talk to him to tell him to take down that false accusation, which he did. If people do things that you request and expect them to, then it's probably a good idea to provide them with some positive feedback. So why can't they be honest? Because they're too short-sighted. They think correctly for the most part that people have short memories. I've always been very negative about the media, and I've always been down on it because I have a pretty good memory. And so I notice when somebody says one thing and then 2 weeks later, 3 months later, a year later says the opposite. So, but that's not true of most people. And so, it's just something that we have to deal with. Anyhow, well, that's it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. By the way, if you're not aware, we have turned on In Demand. So with the exception of the unique variant cover paperback, with the cover by Alan Qua, you can still obtain most of the perks from the Alt Hero campaign. Same link, same place. So if you want to join the winning, you can still do so, even though the campaign is officially over. So thanks very much again, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. Have a good evening.